I would like to call to order the regular board meeting of Tuesday, March 7th, 2023. As is our custom, we begin our board meetings with the singing of our national anthem. We are very honored today to have a pre-recorded video of students from David Thompson School singing O Canada. I would ask everyone to please stand and follow the lead of the students.
O Canada, our home and native land, true patriot love in all of us command. Quand on va se porter la guerre, il s'est porté la croix. Ton histoire est une épopée des plus brillants espoirs. God keep our land glorious and free. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee. O Canada, we stand on guard for thee.
We would like to acknowledge the traditional territories and oral practices of the Blackfoot Nations, which include the Siksika, the Piikani, and the Kainai. We also acknowledge the Tsuut'ina and Stoney Nakoda First Nations, the Métis Nation Region 3, and all people who make their homes in the Treaty 7 region of southern Alberta. I'd like to take this opportunity to welcome all of our staff and public in attendance at this meeting. Our first item of business is to approve the agenda for today's meeting. Ms. Miner, do you have any changes that need to be noted?
Madam Chair, the following agenda change request has been received that item 10.2.1, Chief Superintendent's Update Report, be removed from the consent agenda and added as item 8.1 under matters reserved for board information.
Could I have a motion that the agenda be approved with the proposed changes? Thank you, Trustee Dennis. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Our next item of business is item 3.1, 2023 ASBA Edwin Parr Teacher Nominee. Chief Usi, would you please introduce the report?
My pleasure. Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, as you're aware, the Edwin Parr Award was created by the Alberta School Boards Association, ASBA. It recognizes excellent first-year teachers who contribute to public education in Alberta through the Edwin Parr Teacher Award. Each year, the CBE Human Resources Department asks school principals to nominate exceptional first-year teachers in their schools to a committee of CBE leaders to choose one to bring forward as our representative. At this time, I'll turn it over to Superintendent Armstrong to provide more details. Thank you.
Through the chair. So every school board has excellent first-year teachers, teachers who deserve to be recognized for their outstanding efforts through the ASBA Edwin Parr Teacher Award. Nominees for the award are first-year kindergarten to grade 12 teachers who will complete a minimum of 100 full-time equivalent days of teaching service within the current school year. The initial identification and selection of the nominee is made by the nominee's school board, and for the CBE, a committee of education leaders identifies a candidate among a number of worthy nominees. Each school board can nominate one candidate for the submission to their associated zone chair. Each zone then selects one nominee as the zone recipient of the award. A zone level celebration is hosted by each zone prior to provincial recognition by ASBA. In total, 6 Edwin Parr Teacher Awards are distributed and recognized at a provincial level ASBA meeting at its fall general meeting. And with that, I'll turn it over to Ryan O'Shaughnessy, who's the Principal Consultant in Teacher Staffing and Chair of the Edwin Parr Selection Committee.
Good afternoon, Chair Dennis, trustees, superintendents, CBE staff, guests, and Edwin Parr nominee. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to move this report forward and to celebrate a fine first-year teacher. With over 500 probationary contracts given out this year and many more first-year teachers on temporary contracts, there's over 700 or more first-year teachers working in our school system. These first-year teachers are doing amazing work in some of the most complex and diverse classrooms we've ever seen. I'd like to thank all of these teachers for their fine work. Through December and January, we invited principals to submit nominations for outstanding first-year teachers in their schools. From this group of 700 teachers, we had 12 outstanding teachers who were nominated for the Edwin Parr Award. I'd like to acknowledge those principals who took that extra time and effort required to bring forward their nominee. The selection committee convened in February and had the pleasure to review the practicum and first-year teaching evaluations of all these candidates. I'd like to take a moment to thank the members of our selection committee for volunteering their time in this process. We were happy to have principal representation from across the city, from across grade levels, and from French immersion and Spanish bilingual schools as well. I'd like to thank Patrick Tomczyk from Tuscany, Tamra Wilcox from Alex Monroe, Cindy Palmer from Roland Michener, Leslie Goodwin from Pine Ridge, Andrea Rickwelm from Eugene Cost, and Aliki Avdikos from Elboya School. After thorough discussion, the selection committee unanimously agreed on our chosen candidate. To share with you a little more about our nominee, chosen from a group of 700 eligible first-year teachers, and to introduce her for your approval, I'd like to invite to the podium the principal of Sir John A. Macdonald School, Michelle Hornby.
Good morning. It is a great honor for me to introduce our 2023 Edwin Parr nominee, Ms. Chantel Claremont. As an early learner with ADHD and challenges at home, Ms. Claremont did not regard school as a warm and welcoming space, leading to a high number of absences. By grade 8, Ms. Claremont believed she was incapable and started to disengage, resulting in the label of a problem child. It took the magic of one high school teacher to ignite a passion for learning, instill confidence, and foster a sense of curiosity in Chantel. The power of Mrs. Gates transformed Chantel into Miss Claremont, a Sir John A. Macdonald teacher who encourages students to be their best selves and reach their fullest potential. Ms. Claremont has embraced the SJAM teaching and learning conditions because it is in her nature to teach children who desperately need her. She has led learning for grade 9 humanities and social studies, as well as 4 CTF courses. With a growth mindset, the use of a calming corner, offering homework hotel opportunities, welcoming students in our GSA, and masterfully integrating Indigenous ways of knowing into her practice, along with the support of her elder, Ms. Claremont nurtures a welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe environment for her learners. Achievement, equity, and well-being are at the core of her practice, alongside success for each student every day, no exceptions. It is an honor for me to introduce our nominee for the Edwin Parr Award, Ms. Chantel Claremont.
Hello. Hi. Thank you all for your consideration today and everyone's kind words about me. When I found out I was nominated for the Edwin Parr Award, I felt just so honored just to be nominated, and even more so to be selected as the CBE's choice. So I was often told in university not to expect to be recognized for all that we do as teachers, but I was okay with that because I didn't go into teaching to win awards. I continue to be here for the students, but it's really empowering to be recognized. I think that also speaks to Michelle's excellence as a principal and our assistant principals, Mo Rashid and Lee Jensen. I feel so lucky to be able to learn from them and grow under Michelle and so many of our wonderful staff at Sir John A. Macdonald Junior High, which we like to call SJAM. They've just been so supportive, including my personal on-site mentors, Sarah Roston, Michael Hoblack, and Mo Rashid. I also have asked for better mentors throughout my practicum, so I feel like I should mention them as well. Catherine Rocker, May Dawood, and Megan Song and Leslie Robertson. They helped me become the teacher that I am today, as well as my mom, who is just the most caring, kind, patient education assistant, as well as my husband, who's supported me all throughout university. So, as mentioned, it was my experiences as a student with ADHD that led me to become a teacher, and I wanted to become the teacher that I really needed as a kid. To make sure that no child feels unsupported and unliked, no matter what. So I was thrilled to be hired at SJAM because I knew it's exactly where I was needed. I have been able to work on building my students' self-esteem and self-efficacy through relationship building and helping them find academic success. And that's really what it's all about. So as the CBE motto goes, success each day for every student, no matter what. Thank you so much.
I'll now ask if any trustees have any questions or comments on the report. Trustee Close, go ahead.
I actually do have a comment on the report. As a result of being at Zone 5 and on the ASBA Awards Committee, and I don't want it to sound like we're supporting participation awards, but when we select the representative that goes up to ASBA in Edmonton, we use those terms specifically, that they are the representative of Zone 5, because we recognize that each board that submits an Edwin Parr nominee, that those are their winners for at the school board level. So when I was talking to Chair Hack earlier, we were joking about the participation award and not talking about winners and losers. But I just wanted to be clear that from a Zone 5 perspective, when we do interview each school board's nominees, we do it with delight and honor and admiration, and then we select one of them to go up to Edmonton in the fall. So I just wanted to share that information. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. I would request the trustee bring forward a motion regarding this item. Trustee Bolger.
That the Board of Trustees approves Chantal Claremont as the Calgary Board of Education nominee for the 2023 Alberta School Boards Association Edwin Parr Award.
Do you trustees have any questions about the motion? The motion on the floor is that the Board of Trustees approves Chantal Claremont as a Calgary Board of Education nominee for the 2023 Alberta School Board Association Edwin Parr Award. Trustee Bolger, would you please open debate?
I would, thank you. So I'm so pleased to make this motion in support of Chantal Claremont to represent the CBE as our Edwin Parr Award nominee. The Alberta School Boards Association provides for an annual presentation of the Edwin Parr Teacher Award in recognition of outstanding teaching performance by a beginning teacher. From what we've heard today, Chantal is making and will continue to make a significant impact on the lives of her students. The CBE is fortunate to have such a dedicated and committed new teacher in our district, among many others. We thank you for your contributions you are making to your students, your school, and your staff, and wish you all the very best for a wonderful school year ahead. Congratulations, Chantal.
Do you trustees want to enter round one? Trustee Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Chair Hack. So congratulations, Chantal, on being chosen to represent the Calgary Board of Education for this award, and for being chosen out of so many first-year teachers to be given this honor. You mentioned a couple of times in your address today to the board about the mentors that you had. and really appreciate you recognizing those folks. What I would also add is that in order to get maximum benefit from any of our mentors, we need to be teachable and willing to hear what they have to say and willing to adjust. And so you obviously are also that person who is teachable and willing to adjust practice to be your very best for your students. So thank you so much for that. You will be a mentor too. And there are many first-year teachers who turn out to be leaders in their school even very earlier in their career because their practice is so good already, but also because you are so moldable and teachable. So thank you for that. Also, you could have chosen many school divisions in the province of Alberta. We have 61 of them, and any one of them would have been fortunate to have you. But thank you for choosing the CBE. Thank you for deciding to make this the starting place for your career. Certainly wish you the very best. So years of fulfillment and joy in this profession that you've chosen. You will undoubtedly be someone's favorite teacher. You will change lives in ways that you never would have expected just because you bring who you are into your job every single day. So congratulations and thank you for choosing us.
Trustees for round one of debate. Trustee Close, go ahead.
I just want to add that I always notice synergies of events or topics or conversation, and today we are talking about our Results 3 citizenship, but we're also having a presentation later on the social well-being framework, and I couldn't help but make the connections when listening to your personal story and also how you're contributing back to creating those relationships with students and knowing them so that they can be successful. So thank you very much. I love Trustee Dennis's words for choosing us. We're glad you have done that, and we will be very proud that you represent CBE as our winner for the Edwin Parr nomination. Thank you.
Trustee Vukadinovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hack. Chantel, congratulations on being the CBE's Rookie of the Year, essentially. And it was so inspiring to hear your story of how you were mentored by others and now you are mentoring so many other children at Sir John A. Macdonald School. So thank you for everything that you do every day for the CBE.
I'll enter round one. First of all, Chantel, wow. Your story is incredibly inspiring. I am so excited every year by our Edwin Parr nominees. Chantel, you're an excellent candidate, and I fully support the recommendation this committee did on behalf of the CBE. Chantel is a great example of the qualities we want and expect from teachers. She's shown leadership and compassion. Recently, I got an opportunity to tour SJAM, and I got to pop in and view her classroom. I witnessed her calming area, the ambience of the room, and the pride her principal had for her. Chantel meets the students where they are and sets them up for lifelong success and learning. I encourage all of my colleagues to support the recommendation and have Chantel represent CBE. Very proud of this nominee. Thank you. Trustee May, go ahead.
It's always hard to follow up finding unique things to recognize you for because there's just so much. But I think it's just really important that you are a teacher sponsor of the GSA Spectrum Club. I think we're increasingly seeing some polarization, and so it's really nice to see that there's safe spaces throughout our schools for all of our students.
Any trustee wishing to enter for a second round of debate? Trustee Bolger, do you wish to close?
Will do. I have nothing further to add, but congratulations, Chantel.
Okay, I'll call the question. Those in favor of the motion? That is carried unanimously. Congratulations. Just want to thank you again, Chantel, for making safe, caring, and productive learning environments for our students that we serve. We wish you the very best of luck and cannot wait to hear what you do next for student success. Thank you.
Super wide photo, or maybe we can form two different rows? Is that possible? Make like a little U shape here?
Yeah.
Around.
Susan's going to have to move into the middle.
I guess the order, can you just take a step forward?
Okay.
Okay, there we go. Kind of curly here a little bit. There you go, there you go.
Our next business deals with results focus. Today on our agenda is the annual monitoring of results 3, citizenship. Chief Usi, would you please introduce the report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, today we are pleased to present the 2021-2022 monitoring report for results 3, citizenship, which outlines our results as a learning organization in ensuring that each CBE student becomes a responsible citizen. There are 12 indicators used to measure progress of results 3, 4 of which use report card data and 8 use data from the CBE student survey, which was administered to over 35,000 students in the CBE in grades 5, 6, 8, 9, 11, and 12. The student evidence presented in the report before you today tells us that we can continue to be very proud of CBE students and our results in a number of areas, including kindergarten to grade 9, demonstrating respect and appreciation for diversity at an overall level of success in report card results of 99%. High overall percentages of high school students who reported they value other cultures, and the high percentage of students in kindergarten to grade 9 reporting to demonstrate respect and appreciation for diversity, with 99% of students achieving some strengths in this area. At this time, Madam Chair, I'll turn it over to the Superintendent of School Improvement to provide further highlights and context for the report before the board today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Usi. Trustees, at this time, I'd like to provide you some further context for the data within this report. Success in these results is due in large part to the intentional and sustained work of school staff in teaching curriculum and in supported by practices and professional learning associated with CBE Cares, the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework, our CBE Land Acknowledgement, and CBE's commitments to acknowledge and support the implementation of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada calls to action. As shared previously, the results for the 2021-22 continued to be situated within the context of COVID-19 pandemic. Prior to January 2022, COVID-19 restrictions were in place for CBE schools, and high levels of staff and student absenteeism continued to affect both learning and the ways in which learning was undertaken, which in turn may have influenced both student opportunities and perceptions in the area of working together through and collaboratively. Despite this, based on report card data, 97.8% of students in kindergarten through grade 9 continue to demonstrate some strength in working and collaborating effectively with others, decreasing only by 0.2 percentage points compared to 2020-21 report card data. And a high overall percentage, 89.5%, of grade 11 and 12 students reported that they work and communicate effectively with others on the 2021-22 CBE student survey. High school student results experienced a 3.4 percentage point decrease in the percentage of high school students reporting participation in community service, school service, or volunteer work to help others. Again, given the timing of the survey, this may be related to limited opportunities due to the ongoing pandemic and student schedules. It remains an area for monitoring moving forward. This time, I will turn it over to Superintendent Pittman to provide further comment.
Thank you, Chair Hacken, trustees. Just a reminder that between January and March of last year, as a society, we saw the relaxation of COVID-19 restrictions, the beginning of a global conflict in Ukraine, and civil unrest both in Alberta and Ottawa. As a result, these events and the surrounding discourses in homes, in the media, and in schools may have shaped student responses in the CBE student survey in particular, specifically students' level of comfort and confidence in sharing their perspectives among peers. One example of this may be in the percentage of high school students reporting that they work and communicate effectively with others, which did experience a 3.1 percentage point drop when compared to 2017-18 survey data. In investigating deeper, questions for the 2021-22 survey around group respect and cooperation maintained the highest levels of agreements at 94.3 and 93.2%, while question themes around social expectations and group communication experienced decreases when compared to 2017-18 CBE student survey results. An example of one question that experienced the lowest agreement rate at 82.5% was, when working with others, I communicate my thoughts and opinions even if they are different than the rest of the group. This was followed closely by the question, I know what's expected of me in different social situations, at 86.3% agreement. While decreases in these measures may be influenced by the context and events during the survey administration period specifically, we also are confident that in the building capacity section and our ongoing work, of building community in schools that will continue to see progress in this area. At this time, we welcome your questions around the Results 3 report.
Trustees have received and reviewed the Chief Superintendent's report regarding the annual monitoring of Results 3 citizenship for the 2021-2022 school year. It is now the board's responsibility to consider the report as evidence of reasonable organizational progress in this results area. I now invite any trustee who has questions about this monitoring report to offer them to the Chief Superintendent. I encourage you to limit your questions to those that will assist the board to make decisions regarding whether reasonable progress has been made to the ultimate achievement of this results policy. I remind trustees that the emphasis for monitoring results is not on compliance, but rather on reasonable progress. Trustees with any questions? Trustee Vukadinovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hack. I found the presentation from Superintendent Pittman fascinating and very insightful, very analytical. So then I'm wondering, you noted some of the underlying causes for why there was a drop under the one that says, when working with others, I communicate my thoughts and opinions, even though they are different than the rest of the group. And part of addressing something is knowing the underlying causes. So that was very helpful. So what are CBE teachers doing in schools to try to make students more comfortable about expressing thoughts and opinions? And I know it can't just be on teachers trying to address massive societal issues that have occurred in the past few years, but what are our teachers doing to try to make students more comfortable again?
Through the chair, I appreciate how you ended your question with make more comfortable again. I think some of this is a time factor and experience. So it is expected that given the time period of the survey administration, that and when we compare to pre-pandemic levels of what has shifted external to our school communities and how that may be impacting internally. Core elements of work that are happening across the system that are core to teacher practice relate to the literacy and mathematics frameworks, our Indigenous Education Holistic Framework, and what you'll hear further today around the Student Wellbeing Framework, where we are in fact directly modeling and teaching how it is to make those spaces safe again, how we engage in complex discussion around topics that create dissonance and development in a way that's developmentally appropriate. So when we think about what that looks like across the system, we really look at some of the foundational guidance that looks around the environments, diverse text, bringing multiple ideas into the classroom, and always modeling multiple perspectives and creating the conditions that teach students how to engage in those discussions in a way that is respectful, safe, and allows for a broadening of perspective.
Trustee Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hack. So my first question is around volunteer opportunities. So on page 18 of 45, we talk about students volunteering within their school. And so I'm curious, I guess, about this. I know Superintendent Holika, you mentioned that COVID had an impact on the types of opportunities that might be available to students. Speaking from someone who I feel benefited significantly from being able to volunteer for things in school, cleaning the chalkboard brushes. So yes, I'm that old, that I cleaned chalkboard brushes in elementary school on the big cleaner that had the big bag, that vacuum that blew up, and it was great. Going into the janitor's closet to clean brushes. I felt special being able to do that. Working in the school's lunchroom, right? And, helping sell lunches at school. All of those opportunities, volunteer opportunities build confidence in students and help them to understand the community around them. And so those are really important. So I was wondering if you could provide just high level some examples of, some opportunities that our students do have to volunteer in school.
Thank you. And through the chair, we are aware of many opportunities for students, although I'm not sure chalk eraser cleaning is still a club in most of our schools. I'd say that has probably evolved over time, but the spirit of providing students with leadership and voice opportunities is still very critical. And we know, just sort of dovetailing to the last question that was asked, it's really important to attend to the social emotional learning of our students and making sure that they have opportunities through participating in extracurricular clubs is part of that. So, you know, certainly through the knowledge that we have of our education directors, through our direct visiting of schools, and also by gaining some feedback from our student voice group that Chief Superintendent Usi leads, we are able to connect with students and staff and understand what are the opportunities that they have. And they often respond to the desires of the students within the school. So some that we can just share as an example, a fairly common one would be a student council group. Sometimes that has other names, it can be a student leadership group, and student voice clubs where they are trying to gather the voice of some of their student colleagues and understand what the needs of their fellow students are and look at making sure that there's a positive culture and providing leadership in that regard. Also, you know, taking a keen interest in diversity has been certainly I'd say a focus of many of our students in schools, supported by staff within our schools. We had our Edwin Parr trustee nominee speak to her work in leading a GSA within her school, but other diversity clubs exist also. And there has been a really keen interest from students and staff to be able to support in that way. There's also a lot of opportunities to support school-wide events, and so sometimes there's ongoing work and sometimes it's event-driven. So students and staff may organize and gather around specific activities, whether it is about promoting citizenship through social justice or charity activities, or else being able to provide opportunities for students to engage in spirit-based activities or events at the school that help provide a positive school culture.
Trustees, with any other questions on the report? Trustee Close, go ahead.
A comment and a question, so it's really more of a reflection. Last year when we reviewed the results for citizenship, I talked about the importance of sense of community, and I think we witnessed that in our schools a tremendous amount. When we're doing school tours, we see it. But one of the things that actually made me sad when I was reading this report was the transition, possibly because of COVID. I think we are witnessing difficult transitions to middle school and junior high for some of our students. And so when I tour schools, I see our guidance counselors at the high school level a little more prominently available. They're in the learning commons. I have seen examples of where staff have that expertise at the middle school level, where they have open hours where students can talk to them about their mental well-being. And I'm just wondering what examples or capacity that we have to build to address some of, like, obviously progress is being demonstrated with the indicators that we have. I'm not complaining about that or not worried about that. But I do see a through line as far as from our academic results, and then through the citizenship one for our grade 8 students, that how do we attend to that?
So through the chair, really good question and really important to consider. And certainly when we do present our student wellbeing framework, we'll be speaking to the importance of acknowledging that student wellbeing is a condition for learning, and that is why we address it within schools. But certainly when we think about the impact of the pandemic and certainly other questions that have emerged regarding why do we see a delay, or do we see supports that's needed for students as they re-engage in school with each other, with their learning, and with their own ability to feel well and experience well-being. And we do have that support within all of our classes. I would say that's been a fundamental piece of work that the CBE has been instrumental in creating conditions for over many years. Certainly there's been specific attention given to that during the years of COVID and since that time. And that really lies in that universal support. We know that our teachers are oftentimes the adult that has eyes on the student outside of home and sometimes overall in their school day, and are really need to be attuned to the needs of that child and make sure that they're able to respond and provide support in the moment. And so that universal understanding of well-being is really critical, and we continue to work on that. Part of that understanding too is to know when it requires someone with more expertise or time to be able to tend to that child's needs. And so that would be relying on others within our system or within our schools who provide that support. So when you look at our middle and junior high schools, that often resides within the expertise of a resource teacher. For students that require additional supports, it can move through our area learning team to access other professionals, such as our centralized psychology team or others. And certainly we are always wanting to make sure that as much as possible, we bring things down to the universal level of support at the school so that students don't experience disruption, but that we also triage and meet student needs where they're at by providing those other supports.
Trustee Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you. So just, I guess, a comment and a question on the environmental stewardship information. So, clearly we have strong results when students consider how they respond or how they themselves think about environmental stewardship as an individual, but they seem less likely, I guess, to encourage others based on the responses that we're seeing there. So I found that to be a bit of a curiosity, and as I reflected on it a bit, I was wondering if it's because they already see their peers responding that way and being environmentally conscious and good stewards of our environment, and maybe that's why they're not encouraging others to maybe reconsider behavior because they're seeing already responsive behavior. Just curious about that.
Through the chair, certainly there has been an evolution over time when we think about the time of these results policies being put in place, shifts in curriculum and changes within schools and across our system. And, when we think about the CBE sustainability framework, alongside curriculum work, alongside work that teachers are explicitly doing, both in the classroom and outside of the school environment specifically, that this is the norm. This is the baseline, whereas that was more of an introduction. And so when we think about the last 10 years and the shifts in behavior of what is the norm, that is certainly a possibility to consider, and one of the elements, a reflection of celebration perhaps, something still to continue to consider as we contemplate the way in which we support student action in their work in environmental stewardship specifically.
Trustee May, go ahead.
I guess just kind of a follow-up with that. When it comes to environmental conversations, the percentage has dropped since 2017. How, like you said, that it kind of works into the curriculum, but does this influence like a future sustainability framework, or kind of how does the results from this kind of flow through our policies and results?
Through the chair. In the case of the CBE sustainability framework and this work right here, I would say that the two are complementary, but yes, the efforts of the CBE through the sustainability framework most likely have an influence. And why I say that is that certainly the primary purpose of the sustainability framework really is to ensure that the CBE remains compliant with legislated requirements. I would say, though, that as we are doing this work, and given the fact that CBE schools are located across the city, we are also modeling a behavior that is going to become more and more important into the future, a behavior that students will potentially look to emulate, and that could then, as a result, cause a change in how they see themselves being responsible for their actions, but also a responsibility maybe to inform others of the need for action. Again, by using the CBE as an example, as a role model, of how we're able to make a difference across the city.
As trustees gather thoughts, if they have any more questions, I'll go here. Page 20 of 45. Looking at this report, I'm finding it interesting how low the curious about others in Canada is. Can admin give us insight on at what age do they not have that self-centered perspective of life? Like, when is that fully developed so that they are looking outward? And do you believe that the pandemic played any role in bringing attention inward versus outward through what each individual student was going through?
Certainly, Chair Hack. So we know that awareness beyond self is a developmental process that requires a great deal of social emotional learning, which we've already mentioned is the focus of our schools. So it's important to consider that most school-aged children enter into school with an awareness of others that will influence their behavior and their interactions and decisions. There's also individual differences. So we do expect to see that, and to expect to see that how individual students consider their impact on others would certainly be definitely indicative of their own personal development, as well as, you know, usually spreading to the sort of the norm of what we would see for student of that age. So as students enter into school, they are developing that awareness, which matures and grows over time. Certainly as adolescents and emerging adults, that certainly becomes, I'd say, another formational phase where they're starting to consider the consequences of their actions, and that development tends to occur over time as they, you know, engage in understanding of the consequences of risk-taking behavior and their relationships with others a little bit more deeply. So yes, I'd say the pandemic has been thought, and certainly would be reflected in research, that it has had an impact on social development as a result of probably plain and simple a lack of interactions during that time when they have been absent from school because of having to be at home with their learning, or because they have been absent due to their own illness or the impact of illness on their families or their friends. And in addition to that, the reduction of ability to engage in social interactions outside of school, either by engaging in sort of free type of play that would normally happen either in other children's or families' homes, or it could even be the ability to engage in recreation, whether it's formalized or informal. A lot of that had been removed during the time of COVID and is starting to rebuild back up, which is an excellent way to support social development. So I think it's really important to just, you know, taking it into perspective about the question about curious of others in Canada, to also just sort of explore and think about how the pandemic affected people's perspective on travel, and how they were thinking about interacting with others in different parts of the world. So while COVID may have limited our children's ability to travel, it also probably reduced their exposure to, you know, being able to become engaged with thinking about other cultures, or, you know, it's just very limited in that way. But we do know that as travel has resumed, that may increase. As well, we have been gifted with so many newcomers in our city from different cultures and different parts of Canada, that might also be able to create some breadth to their experiences. And then finally, I would just say that it's really important to consider how direct teaching of this particular outcome can actually influence students' perception on how they view others and their place in reference to others. And a good example of that is an increased result associated with the increased Indigenous understandings. So that actually increased over the time of COVID, and I would attribute that certainly to the focus that has been supported by the Board of Trustees within CBE, and of course the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework teachings becoming alive in the classroom because of our teachers.
Thank you. Trustees with any other questions or comments on the report? Seeing none. Any trustee who wishes to bring forward a motion regarding exception or accommodation should provide the motion to the corporate secretary and to all trustees by noon Thursday, March 16th, 2023. This item will be placed on the March 21st, 2023 agenda for the board's consideration. Next on our agenda is the annual monitoring of operational expectations 7, communication with and support for the board. Chief Usi, would you please introduce this report?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, today we present the monitoring report for Operational Expectation 7, Communication Weights and Support for the Board. The data collected for this monitoring report applies to the 2021-2022 school year. The purpose of this report is to provide evidence that the Chief Superintendent supported the Board by ensuring sufficient, accurate, and timely information so they can meet their mandate as the Board of Trustees. Some key highlights of this report include the following. All 9 scheduled operational expectation monitoring reports were presented consistent with the Board's annual work plan and contained sufficient information for the Board to develop compliance with the operational expectations. All results reporting was completed consistent with the Board's annual monitoring cycle and enabled the Board to assess reasonable progress towards achievement of those results policies. The Board of Trustees also received board development sessions on CBE's math and literacy frameworks and the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework, which supports student success at CBE in line with the Board of Trustees' results policies and the CBE's education plan. While CBE continued to operate during the COVID-19 pandemic, the Board of Trustees received timely updates on CBE's trends, facts, and other operational information, including updates on the hub model of online learning, COVID impacts on operations, and other key operational updates. The Board of Trustees also received student presentation focused on results. While those presentations occurred remotely and by video, they offered the Board of Trustees a view on how the Board's policies and the education plan are lived out in CBE schools. I'm pleased that we're able to return to in-person presentations for this school year. At this time, Madam Chair, we'll be happy to answer any questions that trustees may have. Thank you.
Thank you. The operational expectations policies define the degree of authority transferred to the Chief Superintendent as he makes day-to-day decisions. The Board of Trustees has previously reviewed the reasonable interpretations of this operational expectation and approved that the Chief Superintendent reasonably understands the values underlying this policy, and that the indicators previously provided by the Chief Superintendent are acceptable to the Board. I now invite any trustee who has questions about the report to offer them to the Chief Superintendent. Let me remind the Board that the purpose of considering this report is to satisfy the Board that its policy values were complied with during the 2021-2022 school year. I encourage trustees to limit their questions and comments in support of monitoring. Seeing no questions must mean the report was well done. We now come to the point where trustees are asked to identify their intentions to bring forward any motions related to compliance with this operational expectations. Any trustee who wishes to bring forward a motion regarding exceptions to finding the evidence to be compliant or a motion of accommodation for exceptional performance in a particular area should provide the corporate secretary and all trustees with the proposed motions by noon Thursday, March 16th, 2023. If there are no exceptions or accommodations, then this item will be placed on the consent agenda for the March 21st, 2023 board meeting, with the motion that the Board of Trustees approves that the Chief Superintendent is in compliance with the provisions of OE7, communication with and support for the board. Next on our agenda is item 7.1, a board development session on the student well-being framework. Chief Usi, would you please introduce the report?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Trustees, I'm pleased to introduce to you our Calgary Board of Education Student Wellbeing Framework. To begin, I want to acknowledge that well-being has always been a central component of our work in the CBE, and is reflected in our board priorities of student success of achievement, equity, and well-being. We recognize the importance of prioritizing student well-being within educational settings, and that this requirement is reflected within the Education Act, professional standards for educators and educational leaders, and through research that demonstrates the impact of well-being on students' ability to learn and grow. 4 years ago, when I joined the CBE, I asked schools to formally identify a well-being for learning goal in each of our school development plans. This was not new work to CBE schools. However, documenting this goal within school development plans allowed for this commitment to be formalized and measured for both ourselves and for the greater community we serve. Viewed through the lens of well-being, the literacy and mathematics frameworks, along with the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework, have provided us with guidance and insights in creating effective learning environments in CBE schools. Tools and supports to do this, and also has provided tools and supports to enable us to do this work. Today, we take another significant step forward in sharing with you a discrete framework focused on student well-being. At this time, I'd like to invite Superintendent Pittman to share further information about the framework that will be presented today. Thank you.
Thank you, Chief Usi. Chair Hack, trustees, our CBE education plan highlights the importance of supporting all students with their well-being. This work spans across various goals and outcomes and key actions within the education plan, including our design of curricular learning experiences, ensuring safe and caring school environments, supporting holistic well-being, promoting diversity and inclusion, and working collaboratively with critical partners to enhance student well-being experiences. Through school and system-based student supports and professional learning opportunities, all schools within the CBE are ensuring that public education indeed serves the common good through increasing student well-being. I'll now pass it over to Superintendent Holoka.
Thank you, Superintendent Pittman. As stated, the Student Wellbeing Framework provides a foundation for work already underway throughout the CBE. Today, I am honored to welcome and introduce some members of the School Improvement Wellbeing Team who provide significant leadership and support for student well-being across the district each day. So I'd like to introduce to you David Dick, who is our Education Director. He will be presenting today. And with us we have Monica Crane, our System Assistant Principal, and our Specialists of Wellbeing, Chris Fenlon McDonald and Kate Love. Today is an opportunity to demonstrate the board's commitment to student well-being through the Calgary Board of Education Student Wellbeing Framework. This framework will further support system-wide efforts in support of the CBE Education Plan goal of creating strong achievement and well-being for lifelong success through learning excellence. I will now invite Education Director David Dick to begin the presentation.
Thank you, Superintendent Holoka. Good afternoon, Chair Hack, trustees. Today it is my pleasure to share with you the Student Wellbeing Framework. As shared by Chief Usi, the Student Wellbeing Framework is an addition to our existing frameworks, which serve as foundational and enduring documents that provide ongoing direction to guide our work in CBE. The three goals of the Student Wellbeing Framework are to advance a culture of well-being, to explain why a culture of well-being is important, and to suggest how to achieve it. By defining the what, the why, and the how related to student well-being, the framework creates a shared understanding, common language, and clarity when guiding our actions related to improving student well-being. The student well-being framework positions the improvement of a culture of well-being at the forefront of our collective work, which begins with creating welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning environments that are equitable and inclusive. This ensures that all of our learners thrive in our learning spaces. The two intended outcomes of this framework are to promote well-being for lifelong success and to guide the professional learning development for staff. This graphic anchors the student well-being framework and represents the CBE's commitment to advancing an embedded positive culture of well-being throughout the organization. Each of the 4 blades of the pinwheel correlates in color and represents a key element in developing a culture of well-being within CBE. These 4 essential elements provide focus and are aligned with the identified priorities of the education plan. This symbol highlights the importance of well-being, which we all know is critical for both ourselves as individuals and collectively as employees, and then in turn for our students. Although the focus of this framework is student well-being, we know that in order for our students to be well, first, our employees must be well. A pinwheel design was chosen because the center point brings each blade together and makes it possible for the pinwheel to spin. The center point remains constant and in focus. In the same way, each blade or element of the student well-being framework work together to sustain a culture of well-being across our organization. When these elements are coordinated and balanced, they work in concert to improve student achievement. As shared by our superintendents, the student well-being framework operationalizes the mission and values within CBE to ensure that students are individually and uniquely known and nurtured. Student well-being is a priority that is stated specifically within the learning excellence goal of the education plan. It is also embedded throughout other goals and across key outcomes, as it is essential to the success of students in their daily classroom experiences. Well-being is the foundation of and a reflection of equity and achievement for students in each of our schools. Well-being, equity, and achievement combine together to create a strong sense and culture of well-being. One of the keys to student well-being is knowing the unique social and developmental identities of our learners. When we know our students' individual identities and their stories, we are then better able to provide them with personalized, responsive instruction. This in turn fosters engagement and achievement in learning. The next few slides will define what we mean when we use the term well-being. There are 4 important points to consider in defining a culture of well-being. A culture of well-being begins with holistic and balanced approaches, which consider the 4 domains outlined in the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework: spirit to be, heart to belong, body to do, and mind to know, which are critical for everyone's well-being. A culture of well-being is also central to achieving the goals that drive our education plan related to learning and people excellence. It is also both the individual and collectively applied, and this in turn influences the kinds of learning and work environments that we intentionally create. It is critical for healthy students, which makes them more likely to reach their academic and personal potential. In CBE, well-being is conceptualized as a balanced state of being that provides a foundation for resilience, belonging, and purpose in life. In examining well-being and building common language in this work, there are a number of factors and definitions to clarify. When we use the term domains, this refers to the 4 domains of the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework: spirit, heart, body, and mind, which are interconnected and reliant on a holistic, balanced approach to well-being. When we refer to determinants of health, These are the broad range of individual characteristics and behaviors, as well as social, economic, and environmental factors that determine an individual's health. The term dimensions of wellness refers to these 8: physical, social, emotional, spiritual, environmental, financial, intellectual, and occupational. The term elements is taken from the education plan and refers to students, employees, schools and workplaces, and communities, which all contribute to a culture of well-being. When we talk about components, we are referring to the 4 comprehensive school health areas described as teaching and learning, policy, partnerships and services, and social and physical environments. Lastly, the term competencies refers to the 5 competencies of social emotional learning: self-awareness, self-management, social awareness, relationship skills, and responsible decision-making. Together with the literacy, mathematics, and Indigenous education holistic lifelong learning frameworks, the well-being framework informs schools in achieving desired learning outcomes to support all learners. Within CBE, well-being is a long-term investment which directly influences lifelong student success. It is a collective effort which requires well-being to be a priority when making decisions to enhance student learning. To advance a culture of well-being, the Student Well-Being Framework and the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework work in kinship with one another to ensure a holistic, balanced approach in support of achievement and well-being for all students. Elders have taught us that well-being begins with each individual connecting to self or being in spirit to enable individual responsibility for well-being and learning. Dr. Pamela Toulouse states that these 4 domains represent aspects of a human being that makes them whole. Nurturing the 4 domains of the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning framework will support the well-being of both staff and students in CBE. You will recognize the CBE Cares graphic here, which speaks to our actions in support of diversity and inclusion. The Student Wellbeing Framework is another way that we promote the inclusion of all backgrounds, perspectives, and abilities. We seek to celebrate all aspects of intersecting identities to foster lifelong learners. By providing universal strategies, highlighting the spectrum of identification in terms of race, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, sexual orientation, ability, and other unique qualities and ways of being, we create conditions to support and nurture welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning and work environments. School connectedness is the belief by students that adults and peers in the school care about their learning as well as about them as individuals. Research in school connectedness suggests that investing in healthy relationships in schools leads to improved learning and life outcomes. It is an important protective factor that promotes the health and well-being of all students. According to the Joint Consortium for School Health, students who feel a sense of belonging at their schools are also more apt to experience increases in positive mental health, have improved academic achievement in school attendance, and experience positive perspectives such as hope and optimism. Social emotional learning, or SEL, is the process through which all young people and adults acquire and apply the knowledge, skills, and attitudes to develop healthy identities, manage emotions, and achieve personal and collective goals. SEL supports students in understanding their emotions and showing empathy for others. It also helps students know how to establish and maintain supportive relationships and how to make responsible and caring decisions. In this diagram, you will see the 5 core competencies at the center of the wheel. You will also see the key settings wrapping around these core competencies. These key settings emphasize the importance of establishing equitable learning environments and coordinating practices across classrooms, schools, and families, and communities to enhance all students' social, emotional, and academic learning. In this school-wide systemic approach, SEL is infused into every part of students' educational experiences, across all classrooms, during all parts of the school day, and out of school time, and in partnership with families and communities. Resilience is another important component of understanding how we can support student well-being. This slide shows a resilience scale metaphor and represents how negative experiences and adversity can be counterbalanced by positive experiences and supports. On the left are the negative experiences of a student, and on the right, the positive experiences. What's most important to note is that it is not strictly the number of positive or negative experiences of a student that tips the balance toward being resilient, because it is the fulcrum that plays a critical role and slides to the left or to the right, depending on the skills and abilities a student has learned and is able to apply. The more skills and strategies a student can use, the more resilient they become when dealing with adversity. Students benefit by engaging in proactive behaviors which supports their own well-being. These behaviors strengthen the attributes, skills, and environments needed to be resilient. Therefore, in a culture of well-being, we need to consider how to positively impact the resilience of students and to support their social-emotional learning. Strategic actions that foster resilience in students that CBE can take an active role in the development of include supporting responsive relationships, providing safe environments, engaging in core skill building, for example, emotional regulation, problem solving, and coping strategies, and seeking ways to reduce stressors while respecting the diversity of each student's unique strengths, talents, and goals. Students require skills of social and emotional regulation in order to cope with stress and be able to plan and problem solve. Research indicates that the foundation of such resiliency skills allows children to navigate challenges and develop positive mental health. Therefore, in a culture of well-being, schools make decisions and take actions which positively impact the resilience of their students. These actions are a part of a continuum of supports which enhances the individual and collective well-being of students. These protective factors can shift the fulcrum from provide leverage for further positive experiences while helping to develop individual self-awareness, self-management, social development, and improved decision-making. Now we will focus on the why. Why is having a student well-being framework important? Education is a determinant of health, and it is what we as a school board and what schools can directly influence. There is considerable interdependence between academic success and student well-being. Acknowledging health as a precondition for learning locates well-being within the universal scope of practice of the education system. Schools are ideal settings where children and youth well-being can be learned, modeled, and practiced. Well-being positively influences student learning outcomes, and success in learning enhances student well-being, and a healthy school community promotes the holistic development of students and the 8 dimensions shown in this graphic. With a healthy spirit, heart, body, and mind, students are empowered to experience success at school with their families and in the community. Teachers know that how students feel impacts how they learn. Students who are healthy, safe, rested, and cared for are ready to learn. We have looked at what student well-being is and the various aspects that contribute to our understanding of well-being, and we have looked at why it is important. Next, the framework suggests how this culture of well-being can be advanced. CBE promotes the engagement through the Comprehensive School Health, or CSH. CSH is an internationally recognized, evidence-based, whole school approach that seeks to address well-being in educational environments in a planned, integrated, and holistic manner in order to improve both health and learning outcomes. The comprehensive school health approach provides schools with clear processes and a solid understanding of how to support a thriving culture of well-being. Specifically, these tools will support the achievement of school development plan well-being for learning goals and a variety of well-being initiatives in the schools. CSH builds healthy school communities that support students in reaching their full potential as learners and as healthy, productive members of society. The 4 components of comprehensive school health are, number 1, teaching and learning. This entails both formal and informal curricula, resources, professional learning, and the knowledge and understanding to intentionally work towards increasing health and learning outcomes. Secondly, policy. And here we're thinking of guidelines and regulations, which includes ways that we promote student well-being and achievement, such as AR 6031, which supports us in shaping welcoming, caring, respectful, and safe learning environments. Thirdly, partnerships and services. This refers to the importance of student voice, key leaders within the school communities, and a wide range of interest holders and partners to wrap around and to support this work. And lastly, social and physical environments, which refer to the quality of relationships within the school communities and refers to ensuring that physical environments are safe, accessible, and supportive of healthy choices. When all components work together, the comprehensive school health model is effective in establishing and advancing a culture of well-being. The continuum of supports graphic is from Jigsaw Learning and is used across our system to support a collaborative response. It is helpful in orienting the work amidst a range of supports that can be accessed to support and advance student well-being. The tiers are defined on the right, and the image on the left reflects the changes in tiers and supports. However, you will notice that there are no hard or defined lines in the image. And this is because when we need to transition between supports from one tier to the supports of another, this varies from student to student. The work of educators in the classroom centers on Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports. For example, when supporting student mental health, teachers can focus on positive relationships, which is the responsibility of everyone interacting with the student. In Tier 3 or 4, however, we would work with or refer students to the mental health experts for more intensive supports and strategies. In order to further support the improvement of student well-being and in teaching students the understandings and skills they need, supports are required. Strategies that help to increase the protective factors and reduce risk factors can be actioned through a continuum of supports and services, which work together so that students can thrive. For example, an effective strategy to improve student achievement, equity, and well-being is to focus on improving relationships within the school community. Again, Universal Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports are the focus of this framework. These supports are positioned in this framework and more robustly explored in the companion guide, which will accompany this framework. Schools are optimal settings to support health and well-being of students. School-based staff are ideally positioned to inform, educate, and promote well-being by creating universal conditions for all students to thrive. The Student Wellbeing Framework identifies 5 strategic actions to advance a culture of well-being in CBE, which are shown on the screen. As mentioned earlier, promoting and nurturing student well-being depends on both individual and collective efforts. The structure shared within the Student Wellbeing Framework is designed to strengthen connections between individuals, schools, service units, and the community in order to ensure a culture of well-being is embedded in our daily work across the system. Intentional actions to advance the well-being of students, employees, schools and workplaces, and communities will strengthen and support the interdependent and dynamic culture of well-being within CBE. In order to facilitate and support the integration of the Student Wellbeing Framework, we will work with staff and students in the following ways. We will include student voice by discussing ideas with Chief Superintendent's Student Advisory Council regarding ways to implement the framework in schools and encourage all schools to include student voice in how to improve their culture of well-being. There will also be system professional learning available for all staff in 2023 and beyond related to the integration of the framework. The professional learning for staff will provide an overview of the what, why, and how related to advancing our culture of well-being and the implementation of a comprehensive school health approach. This learning will encompass new curriculum, system professional learning around the student well-being framework, and will leverage the connection of our well-being network. We will also continue to review school development well-being for learning goal data with the intention to identify the actions taken and strategies implemented by schools to advance a strong culture of well-being. This will continue to inform us on how schools are supporting the achievement of their well-being goals. We will also collect data and feedback through this process from a variety of sources, such as the Assurance Survey, the Our School Survey, and the CBE Student Survey, to identify areas of strength and areas of growth as shared by our students and community. This evidence will continue to inform our strategic actions at both the school and the system level. The universal Tier 1 and Tier 2 supports we spoke about earlier are positioned in this framework and will be more robustly explored in the companion guide, which will accompany this framework. The companion guide will be shared with schools in the spring of 2023. The timing of this staggered release offers space for staff to dig into the theory that is foundational for a culture of well-being. The companion guide will be action-oriented and focused on how to advance a culture of well-being using the comprehensive school health approach and a continuum of supports. It will be a roadmap for educators to take the ideas from the student well-being framework and weave them into their work with students to further support the work of educators in schools in advancing a culture of well-being. It will contain exemplars of how schools can continue to take up this work and offer resources and supports across all divisions. In closing, I want to share a final quote with you from young Pueblo, a poet from Ecuador. We don't just need each other, we are each other. And without each other, we cannot succeed. The truth embedded in this quote has the potential to shift and open our perspective, and at the same time ground us in a shared vision for how we interact and support each other and our students. Together, our work and leadership is in service to our students by creating conditions in schools where students can develop a strong sense of belonging and achievement. CBE is built on relationships, and every employee in CBE ultimately is working to help our students succeed. And in a very real way, all of our work contributes to both our own and others' well-being, no matter the service unit, school, or area of focus of our work. Thank you for your time and support this morning. And again, I want to thank my incredible team for their insights and support of this work. We are eager to continue to lift up the work collaboratively across the system as we move forward.
I'd just like to, yes, please clap. I would just like to close by thanking David and the Student Wellbeing team as well for their preparation and presentation of the Student Wellbeing Framework at today's board development session, and to acknowledge all of their ongoing efforts to prioritize student well-being in our system. We now welcome any questions that trustees may have.
Sorry about that. Trustees with any questions? Trustee may go ahead.
So I really appreciate the why found in the document. I'm just missing the how. And so I hear a bit about the companion guide. And so will that be publicly available? Will it kind of outline timelines for implementation? How does that work within the system?
Through the chair, thank you for your question. So the how will be to share the comprehensive school health approach as schools continue that work in their school development plan learning goal, well-being for learning goal. So that's centered on student achievement and well-being. And so this will give us a common structure in schools to approach that work. As Chief Superintendent Usi mentioned in his comments earlier, we've been doing this work for 4 years in a formal way. In reality, we all know, we experienced that when we were in school. Teachers have always been doing this work. The teacher quality standard, the number one component is developing effective relationships. And so it is with that foundation and that work that we have been continued to lift up the well-being for learning. And so through the comprehensive school framework, through professional learning, over time, we've already provided one session for administrators. We have others lined up for teachers as well for the remainder of this year and then beyond. And the companion guide will support that work, as we mentioned, with specific links and strategies to resources. So schools do not have to say, well, last year we focused on reducing anxiety, and now what's out there for us to use? And so the team will work with our partners, AHS and Ever Active Schools, for example, to bring these resources into the companion guide and make that available. To answer the second part of your question, the companion guide will be an internal document for teachers and staff and administrators on Insight, but the framework will of course be posted as of later today on our front-facing webpage.
Trustee Vukadinovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hack, and thank you, Area Director David Dick. Supporting student well-being is very important to me. One piece that I didn't see developed as much as I was maybe hoping for here is talking about our school-based staff, because if our school-based staff members aren't well, then our students won't be well. And supporting the well-being of school-based staff is probably the biggest thing we can do to promote student well-being. And I noticed there were slides there that talked about system coordination, and of course teachers are part of the system. So what are we doing for teacher well-being?
Through the chair. Well, the session's about our student well-being framework. As you note, the well-being of our staff is also important to supporting students, and we recognize the past years have been particularly challenging for that. As a system, the CBE does many things to support staff well-being. There are a variety of supports that are part of our collective agreements, such as sick leave, extended disability, and extended health and dental benefits. In addition, we provide an employee and family assistance program that provides support both to staff and their families. And as you've heard through the presentation, a variety of professional learning is also provided to assist staff in addressing the challenges they face in supporting students. And perhaps the most important support to staff well-being comes from their direct supervisors. And overall staff see their direct supervisors as people they can rely on to support them in that. We're enhancing our efforts in developing leaders across the system so that they are best equipped to provide leadership in a way that is most supportive of staff. And that includes helping leaders better understand the priorities of the system and how they can meet those and provide consistency while at the same time adapting things to best meet the needs of their schools and their staff.
Trustee Dennis, go ahead.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the presentation, and certainly offer my gratitude to everyone who had a hand in this work and developing this framework. As you know, student well-being certainly is a priority for the board, and one that we've articulated clearly to our chief superintendent, and so just thank you so much for this. And also for the guide that will be provided to staff so that the work can continue and so that staff feel supported in terms of supporting student well-being for the kids that they see every day. A couple of things I really appreciated, the egg graph that I know you said it was something else, but I described it as an egg in my notes here. But that continuum of supports for student well-being, and really pleased too that that will be on the public website. As a trustee, I received many questions about supports in schools, and that is just at a high level will be something that will be helpful to point parents to as a bit of a starting point as they continue to work with their principal and their child's classroom teacher around supports for their students. So really appreciated that. Also, there was another graph, I'm just going to get here. It's the social and emotional learning graph. It's the All-State Foundation Castle Wheel 2022. And there was a block in there called self-management. And as I was looking at that, looking at the student well-being framework and then wanting to connect that ultimately to academic success. And so when I look at self-management, I think of things like, managing deadlines, asking for help, adjusting your behavior, or doing what students need to do to be able to create opportunities for their own success, right? So when I think of self-management, those are the things that I think of, because I see those as things then contributing to academic success. I don't know if I'm running down the right path on that or not, and appreciated some of the conversation that came later in the slide around sort of the curriculum and, again, connecting it, I guess, to academic success. But I was wondering if you could unpack it a little bit more for me around how you see this framework contributing to academic success for our students and helping them where they're at.
Through the chair, thank you for your question, and happy to share another example. Yes, certainly you're on the right track there with the examples you provided. I think if we bring that to a student level, the earlier question in the meeting was around when does a child move from me to we, and this is all part of that learning and that support. So part of this is the social emotional regulation. So for example, teaching students to be aware of their emotions. What am I feeling now? And to kind of tune into that, because they'll get into situations that require them to navigate a social situation to resolve, let's say, a problem, or to invite somebody to play with them. And just asking and inviting someone in is an important a foundation for a positive interaction between students. And so it is through those kinds of everyday teachings and learnings. And as a teacher, you have a wonderful opportunity to be right there with your students. And this is another example where I'll refer to the Indigenous Education Holistic Lifelong Learning Framework and the kinship that I spoke about before. For example, many of our schools, our classrooms have talking circles. Everyone can see everyone in the circle. Everyone has a chance to speak. In acknowledgement and awareness of the Indigenous ways of learning, being, and knowing, the teacher or the leader will start with a talking stick and will pass it to the left. That's because when you stand on the land and face south, the sun rises on the left and sets on the right. And so it's some of those little things that can be built into a circle. And I had the opportunity on one of my school visits recently where the teacher invited me in to be part of that circle, sit on the floor, and I got to participate and watch how the students interact and solve a problem that had happened outside that day. So it's a great opportunity, and teachers will say that they start this and they have to model it, and it feels maybe a little new and clunky for the students at first, and then it's not long before they see the power and effectiveness of that, where their voice is recognized, where their ideas are acted upon, that if there is an issue or something they're wondering about, they will come to the teacher and say, can we have a talking circle? I have something that we need to talk about. And so I think it's through those kinds of ways that we will support and will provide all of those supports universally across our system for schools. And it'll also be the companion guide will also be an opportunity for schools to share their best practices with others as well. So it provides, the framework provides the structure, and the companion guide will provide those pathways for sharing best practices.
And I'll just add sort of to get to the question about the need to address well-being as an antecedent condition for learning really has to do with when it comes to self-management, and Director Dick put it so well with thinking about regulation. So if students cannot regulate their emotions, they can't access the part of their brain required to engage in learning, which would be their executive functioning. So being able to develop that social emotional learning for students means that they're able to learn how to manage their own regulation processes, which then allows them to be aware of and manage their emotions to the extent that they can then engage their brain in learning experiences. But obviously some very good examples that go along with the how.
Trustee May, go ahead.
So I really appreciated the dimensions of wellness kind of graph, and the well-being is important in education. The previous slide did also mention mental health, and I'm just trying to connect how the mental health pilot project would influence this work, because it kind of seems like this is more tier 1 and tier 2, and the mental health is maybe more individual support. So I'm wondering how and if those results will impact this in any way.
Thank you. And through Chair Hack, yes, and I think what you're drawing upon is a really good example of how we use the continuum of supports. So what we're speaking to mostly within this framework is that obviously identifying we have this continuum, but most of the work, as we've said a few times today, in addressing mental health and well-being is at that universal level. When we look at our pilot that we're going to be engaging in and providing more immediate access to mental health intervention in schools, particularly for our newcomer and refugee students, being able to have that support at the ready means that we're going to be able to identify students who need to expand beyond those universal levels in a very timely manner. And because we know that our newcomers and our refugees may have experienced trauma, there may be a higher degree of need within moving up that continuum of supports. So while it's obviously the daily work of those classroom teachers and schools that support those students to be able to support, redirect, and help with that regulation pieces, those mental health partnership opportunities allows for the implementation of higher level supports. And those go alongside other supports that we already have in the system, such as our psychologists, our guidance counselors in our high schools, and even to some degree our resource teachers within our other schools who can also be providing tier 2 supports for students or 3 that require further regulation needs and supports with their mental health.
Through the chair, one other piece that I would point out and further to the question around the social and emotional learning on page 9, there are many external programs and different pieces and many discussions happening publicly around, I might offer sometimes a specific area of interest and individual. The framework is really intended to define our system focus and move away from an individual branded program to what is core and centered in research. And when we apply that, it allows us over time to allow for that full universal understanding, as opposed to the definition of well-being according to this program, or do you use this resource or that resource? And so at a universal level, what the team collectively has really done an outstanding job of is setting those specific areas of focus, and then further to the future relative to the companion guide, our opportunity to then determine where each of those pieces and how we may leverage specific resources, but centered not around a product, but what is research-based and known to have the greatest impact on achievement.
Trustee Close, go ahead.
More of a comment than a question, and 2 different threads of a comment. One is super excited about this work. I might have wept with joy reading it, partly because of past work I've done. In fact, I've shared it immediately with the City of Calgary colleague when we worked on the Community Action Plan on Mental Health and Addiction, and she said, "You must be so excited to see the synergies and the results of this work." But I also see a tremendous influence and impact, I think, from a Board of Trustee perspective on the policies that we have that will drive the system around academic success and all of our results. And I think we can have a really deep and profound conversation around what indicators that we want to show for success. Because one of the things why I was weeping with joy is, for me, this final framework integrates everything we need in order to support student success. And what I so appreciate about CBE and the school support model is how we are providing that support to schools in support of student success through the frameworks, and then has been so lovely articulated. But it's also, when I read the report and I hope others find this true, is I found it a really easy way to talk about very complex issues. You framed it out in such a lovely step-by-step process of how you integrated very complex and systemic issues into some understanding. And I think when our schools focus on literacy and math and obviously, and I keep saying social well-being, so I'll have to get better at saying student well-being, but on student well-being, the other piece that just was such a highlight for me is it also showcases how exceptional that Indigenous education, holistic, lifelong framework is, and the impact, I said it wrong probably, the impact that it has on student learning and success. So I really felt when I was reading this, it wasn't jargon, it wasn't eduspeak, it was actually speaking to my heart and translating very complex and adapting very complex issues and challenges in order to make sure that our students and our community are successful. So thank you very, very much. Huge gratitude.
Trustee Vukadinovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hack. One of the things I'm concerned about is how teachers can meet the needs of students every day in the same way when there are more kids in a classroom than the research recommends. And I know that partly that depends on the funding we receive from the provincial government. How do class sizes, so the number of kids per class, impact a teacher's ability to meet the well-being needs of every student every day?
Through the chair. And I know Director Dick already spoke to this, but it really is about the relationship between the teacher and the students. And of course, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. And also other classroom staff and other school staff who really know that child and are able to be there to support their well-being. So the quality of those relationships really becomes more critical than the number of students in the class. So ensuring that our teachers and our classroom and school staff are able to be attuned to the needs of each child, both their learning needs and their social emotional needs, is really the most critical component that is shown in research to be linked to student success. It's the quality of those interactions. So that's really been the ongoing work of our schools and the school support model. And it is the underlying factor within our framework that we hope to achieve. So we want to make sure that all of our students feel connected to their schools, that they feel they have a sense of belonging, and that they feel that they can be successful within our schools. So it'll be really important that we continue the focus that each student is known as a learner and as a person by the teacher and the staff within their school, and that they can be guided upon through the use of all of the frameworks to ensure that they're successful in their learning on a daily basis. And it's also important to note that CBE has historically and continues to invest in other trained professionals who are contributors to student success, both in their learning and in their well-being. So having mental health assessments, supports, or strategies for children or youth in need is also a really important component of that continuous supports. That is an investment that CBE makes.
Trustee Bolger, go ahead.
Thanks very much, and thanks for that response, Superintendent Holok. I think the emphasis on relationships is absolutely key, and as Trustee Close said there, I do feel like this is the final piece of the puzzle as well, and so I just noted that I really do appreciate this entire student wellbeing framework and the connections made between the literacy, the education plan, the math, and the Indigenous education frameworks. It's exceptionally well thought out and very comprehensive. I also wanted to thank you for highlighting the connection that's clearly been made between academic success and well-being, which we all know, but that they are closely aligned and that it is critically important. And then I was thinking about our Edwin Parr Award winner and just the great people we have in our schools. And really, it comes down to excellent leadership and all your people within a school building and your teachers to be able to collaboratively lead this work in our schools. So relationships really are at the crux. And
I appreciated as well that tier 1 and 2 continuums of support, and that this document is reflecting that for well-being, and look forward to seeing the companion guide down the road for our staff. So thank you.
Trustee Vukadinovich, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair Hack. So that there was, speaking of school connections and this connectedness, and it was on slide 7-30. That slide defined school connectedness as the belief by students that adults and peers in the school care about their learning, as well as about them as individuals. And I think what that slide was talking about when it mentioned adults is that we're talking about the adult school-based staff, especially principals and teachers. But to me, what comes to mind when I think about adults and peers in the school care about their learning, I also think about the other major adults in the picture, and that's the parents and guardians. Research shows very often that children whose parents are involved in the school have better outcomes. And there was that quote I didn't catch, was it Pablo Neruda who said it, but we don't just, that Area Director Dick used, that we don't just need each other, we are each other. And that applies just as much, I think, to that parent-guardian relationship with the school. I'm very enthusiastic about the parent role in schools, and it's about on numerous levels, like our parents having a say, and I believe parents do have a say. We have the school development plans where we ask parents, we invite parents to come to school council meetings where they have a say. Do parents connect with teachers? We definitely do that because there's parent-teacher interviews and other opportunities. Do parents have volunteer opportunities? Yeah, we see those in our schools. Do parents see a showcase of what students have learned? We definitely were before the pandemic. I'm worried about how much we're bringing that back. And now that the pandemic is over, that how often we're inviting parents in for celebrations of learning or to see school concerts. And do parents have the opportunity to engage in celebrations and social events? Again, before the pandemic, I saw that, but since the pandemic, I worry about how much we're engaging parents on that social level as well, outside of volunteering and having a say in connecting with teachers and doing student showcases. And also that sense of, are we even tracking, has every single parent over the course of a school year actually walked, or parent or guardian, actually walked into the school building? So that classic model, that 1960s, getting every child through the schoolhouse door, are we applying that same lens of getting every parent guardian through the schoolhouse door, and once they're through, are we making sure that they actually feel welcome and included? So I guess all of that to say is we're looking at student well-being, and I wonder about how this framework is bringing parents and guardians into key members of that student well-being.
Well, I'll start through the chair, and then I'll turn it over to Director Dick. Yes, I think absolutely we would consider always parents and guardians to be key perspective holders and have significant role as primary educators of students. The more that they can be involved in the school, I think we know that there's a tremendous amount of research that shows that their engagement in the school community does have a direct correlation to student success. We also recognize that parents and guardians have different abilities to engage with the school, and our schools are very attuned to that and are really working to meet parents and guardians where they are at and create different opportunities, some of which have been learned through the pandemic, where we can reach out to parents through their convenience as well. So I think, a lot of pieces of what you were suggesting and sort of mentioning in your comments about the school building becoming a welcoming space for parents, and that they become welcomed in to bear witness to the learning and the culture and climate of the school. And that would be certainly the tremendous work of our principals and our school staff in making sure that those patterns were established and continue to be established in our schools during the last year. And that has been a significant positive component of the resumption from the pandemic. And it has had tremendous impact on our school communities to be able to showcase that learning and for students to feel and demonstrate that connection in front of their parents and families, and the parents to be able to know more about the school community so that they can be supportive in ways that work for them. So there's definitely a range of what that looks like in each school community, because it's responsive to the needs of the parents, and that's going to look different across the CBE. But again, that's one of our strengths of our principals, is to know how to engage parents and to be able to welcome them in. David, please.
Through the chair, well, I would just add that the school councils are another way of inviting parent voice. And I know that in many of our schools, I don't have hard numbers, but I do know the schools that I supervise, there are many opportunities for parents to gather and to have those spontaneous kinds of things planned, and then also fundraising opportunities that on a social level allows them to connect. So as was referenced earlier, from January to May, things are to June, changing last year and continuing. We're seeing more and more of those interactions. Thank you.
I'll add my 2 cents of gratitude in here. I know it's been spoken about a lot, but I love how this framework is based on relationships. It's something that our teachers and educational assistants and adults in the building do almost naturally. This gives them the words and supports they need to be successful in helping themselves and support students in their healthy well-being. It really speaks to me, that sense of belonging and hope. The I belong, I have hope for the future, is a human experience. This leads to resiliency, and I know you talked about moving that fulcrum. This is going to increase their resiliency to be able to tip the scales in their perception of what they're going through. And again, nothing is talked about in isolation. You've tied this here to welcome and caring, safe learning spaces, tied to equity and achievement, tied to our Indigenous framework, tied to the CBE cares, diversity and inclusion, and tied to that continuum of supports that CBE already offers. Again, nothing's done in that silo. Everything happening here, I can see how it would benefit students. I appreciate the understanding that you can't have healthy students without having healthy teachers. And hopefully these resources that are coming with the pamphlets make teachers feel more supported in the work that they're doing in the schools. As a past teacher myself, knowing what we do here and how it affects individuals and the classroom is really important to me. So thank you for making those connections. And again, a heartfelt thank you for this presentation and this framework. Really appreciate it. Next on our agenda is item 8.1, Chief Superintendent's update. I understand trustees have some questions on this report. Trustee Close, go ahead.
I have two lines of thought. One is there's so much that we can celebrate when it comes to your update, and then I know it's just for information and it's timeliness. And if I want to, as an individual trustee, share some of this, technically, I'm challenged of even just downloading and cutting. I can't cut and paste, and then actually I don't even want to cut and paste. I want to create a video or want to create something else. So I'm just wondering if, and I'll raise this in another venue as well, if our engagement planning committee can just consider how best we can celebrate some of the pieces of information that comes up during the chief superintendent's update. And at minimum, how I can cut and paste so that I can create some pieces. But really why I've pulled this from consent is especially when it comes to collaborative partnerships, I think this is such a great opportunity for us to showcase and cast a light on the good work that CBE is doing. So there's two that have caught my attention, but if superintendents or our chief have others that they want to highlight, I want to give you the opportunity to do that now. But the two that I've highlighted are the ACTUA in STEM from the Indigenous Education team. And in fact, reading anything around the work in support of Indigenous education, I love that outward focus and the connection that they're making in the community. But would love to highlight that if people want to go into more detail. And then also the Unique Pathways programming. This is the one that I actually wanted to cut and paste and share on my social media. So I'm interested in more of how to have a little more of a story of renewing past programming and expanding our offerings. Like what relationships did it take for CBE to do in order to make those connections and the collaborative partnerships, and then actually expand some of the things that we're offering. I've already shared socially around the partnership with Olds College, but anyway, I'm trying to give you an opportunity to publicly highlight those two areas. Thank you so much.
Through the chair, I'll start, and certainly my colleagues can add additional information if necessary. First of all, the Chief Superintendent's update is really, it belongs to our system. It's really a showcase of the incredible work that happens across this organization. And I thank you very much, Trustee Close, for trying to provide opportunities for us to provide greater visibility to the excellent work, and I think you saw an evidence of that just this morning as well. So specific to Unique Pathways, so for example, in Chief Superintendent's update before that is before us today, there are many ways that we promote these opportunities to families, and I'll just go through a number of these, and certainly we can provide additional information as necessary. I know that we sent targeted emails, from my understanding, from our Chief Communications Officer, emails to parents of high school students. We posted banner stories on the corporate website, and schools would also have this information available on their sites. We created videos to highlight programming. We shared information in CBE Connections, a newsletter to families, hosted to career fairs, highlighted in social media, worked with media outlets to promote these opportunities, such as the, you have to help me out here, the Hack Team program, is that what that is? Hack Tech, sorry, my apologies, program, and the partnership with Olds College. So certainly these are a number of vehicles. So schools also have their own communication channels that they use to highlight, to showcase this. But we're always open and welcome to multiple ways of showing the good work that happens across our wonderful system. Anything to add?
Through the chair, so just specific to the collaborative partnership piece in your question of what does it take and what's been pursued, one of the elements is when we have something that's in play, we don't bring it into the Chief Superintendent update until it's complete, typically. And so there's many other exciting elements that are currently ongoing, and we try to bring work that has been confirmed and brought forward. That said, when you look at the collaborative partnerships around the Unique Pathways programming, it first starts with student interest. And that's really at the center of where we would drive that opportunity, and also then is influenced by industry need and the research that the team continually does alongside other partners such as Careers Next Gen to look at what new pathways may be created. Alongside that, just a shout out to all of our post-secondary programs and their investment in key contacts and positions that make a difference for us to be able to develop or redevelop and bring back new opportunities for some of these programs. And when you look at, for example, solving technology problems, design thinking and robotics too, specifically through Olds College, having those new opportunities coming forward in a way that goes beyond the exceptional work. And I would highlight that this last week we did have one of our high schools win in Victoria at a robotics competition and do just excellent work. And we had great participation as well, broadly speaking. It is through the identification of how we can take what is sometimes sparked as an idea in our high schools and great work by teachers then brought forward to expand to a more formalized pathway. And so those relationships to create that, invest the time, and also recognize that our high schools are being flexible with scheduling. And so when we talk about internal communication, it's also really important that each high school is able to recognize where they may need to provide flexibility for specific pieces and where that's not always possible. So we really are careful in what we are pursuing system-wide, available across all high schools, to make sure that all students have equitable access to these types of dual credit programming opportunities as well as the exploratory programs. And it is the information we receive from students and industry combined with possibility thinking of our post-secondaries that allows for these opportunities to take place.
And I can just jump in and speak a little bit about the Actua in STEM collaborative partnership. This is completely formed out of a labor of love of our Indigenous education team, who has been working tirelessly on this for many months in partnership with many. It's particularly within the Indigenous community, Indigenous knowledge keepers in Treaty 7, as well as STEM practitioners within the field. So it's taken quite a bit of partnership to bring this to fruition, but such great intention by all partners to bring it forward, which is why it's being manifested so quickly this year. And just the ability to provide some STEM-focused learning for students in a land-based way focuses our Indigenous Education Lifelong Learning Framework in a very operational way to bring it alive within schools for some of our Indigenous students. So being able to provide this free of charge for our students and supervising staff is quite a gift to them that's being provided by the community. It gives the opportunity for the students to earn CTS credits, which again is really helping to focus towards high school completion for these participating students. The fact that this is covered, all costs are covered by Actua. That's a tremendous partner in this work to be able to provide meals, travel, supplies, conference registration, and so on. And also allowing 4 of our 25 students to then participate as part of an in-STEM youth delegation, giving them the opportunity to further their leadership skills, which I think is a nice dovetailing back to thinking about well-being and how we can encourage leadership amongst our students. So while we have yet to participate in this in May, it is something we felt was baked enough to bring to our trustees as something that is in the works. When it does become to fruition, it's certainly something that we will be highlighting and showcasing for those students and staff participating, because it will be the fruition of a tremendous partnership and learning experience for everyone involved. Is that all the questions? Okay, perfect. That brings us to the consent agenda of our meeting. All items not removed from the consent agenda will be deemed approved with the agenda. This brings us to the conclusion of the public portion of the agenda. The board has 1 labor, 2 land, and 4 strategic planning matters to deal with in private. I'd like to thank all of you who joined us for the meeting. Our next public board meeting is scheduled for Tuesday, March 21st, 2023.